Hello everyone, welcome to Ikamayas Academy. So here we are going to discuss one more interesting article in the February months Down to Earth magazine. So this is part 3 of the magazine, Down to Earth magazine, within the first frame of February, from 1st February to 15th February. So here we are going to see about the article related with orchids. A person from Karnataka has planted huge amount of orchids in that particular a person from Kerala has planted huge orchids in his particular farm. So on that basis, regarding with the orchid protection and wild orchids, what is the importance, we had this particular article. As such, it is a very small article where I have designed it. So if you could see the aspects related with the orchids are a diverse group of flowering plants known for their vibrant and intricate flowers. So rewilding the orchids is what the main motto of that particular article was. If you see in which context, why in the Down to Earth magazine this orchids aspect has come, whereby if you see a healthcare professional from Kerala considered clear, and he has protected 200 wild orchids from the Western Ghats, and he has made protection of that particular 200 wild orchids over there. So what is the importance of these wild orchids? Actually, they are losing its significance. As such, there is huge amount of deprotection of this wild orchids. If you could see why wild orchids are most important, first thing is due to the pleasant aroma which these particular wild orchids have, due to the smell which this particular wild orchids would be there. For that, these wild orchids are known, and due to this pleasant aroma, this orchids would be used in the perfumes, scents as such. So it is very important that you remember this. And high value in medicine and horticulture also. If you could see in the present context also, these wild orchids are used for treating the sprained legs, or it is used in ointment industries. And these orchids, they have huge amount of its impact in the horticulture system. So this is the second importance which we have. If you see the third one, these orchids, they have huge influence on the climatic change control which can be done, and biodiversity which would be there. So biodiversity refers to the variety of flora and fauna which is there. So for maintenance of biodiversity of that particular region, these wild orchids play an important role. If you could see these wild orchids which are there, they are indicator species. What do you understand by the term called as indicator species? Generally, we have different species which we call, there are types of species which we generally include. One is endemic species, one is indicator species, and some species are keystone species, and some species are flagship species, and some species are alien species. Here endemic species, indicator species, keystone species, flagship species, alien species, umbrella species, and we have foundation species. So in this way, if you could see indicator species in types of species, indicator species are those species which generally indicate the health of that particular ecosystem in that particular region. So generally, if you place these wild orchids in highly polluted regions, these wild orchids are not they doesn't have the capacity to grow in that particular region. They would be dying very immediately. Like if you see the mosses and lichens, if you bring them to the urbanized region from the polar regions or the Himalayan ecosystems, they generally tend to die. So in such a way, these particular species, they would indicate the health of the ecosystem. They wouldn't grow in those regions where highly pollution would be there. And if you see what are endemic species are those species which are found in that geographical location naturally, and it is not found anywhere else. And if you see keystone species, generally keystone species are those species which generally without their presence, there shall be influence on one particular individual or the entire ecosystem would be affected if these species won't be there. Example, the top predators like leopard, tiger, they all fall under this keystone species aspect. And flagship species are those whereby, well, like if we declare a species as a flagship species, it means under that particular species, we are also protecting the rest of the species. For example, tiger is declared as a flagship species. So to show some environmental concern, we take this particular tiger and we tend to protect that. Like for example, if we want to protect the forest, we declare tiger to protect that particular forest ecosystem. That's why those species which, because of its vulnerability, because of its significance, or because of its endemism, they can be considered as flagship species. For example, snow leopard is a flagship species of Himalayan ecosystem, whereby representing the threats which Himalayan ecosystem is being experienced. And alien species are those species which doesn't belong to that geographical location, which either deliberately or which wantedly or which naturally has come to that particular geographical location, where that particular geographical location doesn't support the growth of that alien species, but still forcefully if this alien species grow, it shall impact the health of that particular ecosystem which would be there. They are considered as alien species. Like water hyacinth, it shall be disturbing the aquatic ecosystems wherever they are present. Like if you come to umbrella species is nothing but, if any species can be declared as umbrella species, when it would be protected, the rest of the species under it would be protected. Like for example, if in tiger reserves, tiger is being protected, hence tiger is an umbrella species. So under the tiger, leopard, peacock, deer, jackal, fox, all these would be protected. So under huge larger aspect, the rest of the species, when they would be protected, they would be called as umbrella species. And foundation species are those which are present in that particular geographical area since that ecosystem has succeeded, since that ecosystem has been formed, and their abundance in the number is also very high, which would impact the ecosystem further. They are called as foundation species as such. So in such a way, the wild orchids which are present, they are considered as indicator species, and their population recently has declined in Western Ghats very high. That's the reason why the medical professional who is there, he started collecting these wild orchids and started protecting there. And if you see the distribution of this particular wild orchids in India, mostly they are found in Himalayas region. Deeper into the belts of Himalayas, we find these wild orchids. Northeastern India, in this particular region, we have huge amount of varieties of wild orchids, whereby high amount of species, number of different species of wild orchids are found in northeastern India. And in Western Ghats, we find such kind of wild orchids which are endemic in nature. That means like in the Western Ghats, those orchids which are found, they are not found anywhere else. And in and around the high affected regions of Deccan Plateau and Andaman Nicobar group of islands, we would be having the dense orchid population. So orchids have been appeared in the news for consecutive times. So chances are there the questions regarding with the orchids would be coming. So please try to give a special emphasis on this orchid. And if you could see, 60% of the orchids, they are epiphytic in nature. Epiphytic ka matlab hai those particular species or shrubs which generally rely upon other plants, generally which are climbers, usko hum epiphytic bolte hain. So most 60% of the orchids which are present, they are epiphytic in nature. And orchid families listed in Appendix 2 of CITES banning global trade of the orchids. So orchids are not globally trade. If we want to trade anything from one particular country to another, it shall be under this particular CITES. CITES refers to Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species. Clear? So make sure that once you go and check these CITES and what is Appendix 1, what is Appendix 2 under this CITES, one go and cross check this. And recently when cheetah was introduced in India in Kuno National Park, it was under this particular CITES. We have made this cheetahs from South Africa and Namibia to reach India. Once cross check what this site is and what is Appendix 2. So these orchid family, they are listed in Appendix 2 of CITES. It means There is a huge ban on this trading of these particular orchids from one region to another region. Okay, so make sure that once you cross check the orchids and wherever you find articles related with orchids, please try to focus on it. Chances are very high that question in this year 2024 UPSC preliminary examination would be coming. There is a great chance of getting the question from this. Clear? Hence, thank you for watching this particular lecture. Have an awesome day. Jai Hind.